Well, you've done like obviously you've done Ghostbusters Day. You do a lot of other events like we were talking about the drive-in. Maybe you do go to the drive-through. I don't know. You just stop by and you're like, give me some food. But you're appearing like at the Mahoning Drive-in was where you were over the weekend, right? But one of the things you've done recently that certainly got a lot of attention because it was on television and things, and Ghostbusters News reported on it, was that somehow you ended up teaming up with Matt Cardona, right? For the Game Changer Wrestling Homecoming, and the car came out as you call it valet, but I call it manager. So, how did this happen? Like, how did you end up, with the car coming out in the middle of a major like wrestling show that people were attending?
Yeah, so actually, it's last year at Ghostbusters Day, there was a local wrestler, Justin Carino. He's a huge Ghostbusters fan. He had asked me to do something like that, and I said, sure, just let me know. I was a big wrestling fan growing up. He never had an event or anything like that, I guess, that could hold the Ecto, because, it's a pretty big car.
Yeah.
So I guess, I don't know, maybe, he knew the Cardona, because, the wrestling circles are small. I'm not sure how it did, but one day I just got a message from Matt on Instagram, and like, I'm looking, Matt Cardona, I don't recognize the name. And then I realized he was Zack Ryder in the WWE. And obviously I knew that name. And he's just like, I'd love to be able to bring the car out. I got a big thing in Atlantic City. And I'm like, yeah, sure. No problem. We can get it done. So it was a brief conversation. I didn't have any insight as to what was going to happen to the car. And then it's like the next day, I'm like, wait a minute, what are we doing exactly, with the car? He's just like, no, it's going to be far away. I'm like, because I can't have anyone shooting star press onto this thing,
Yeah, tombstone pile driver on the hood.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't want to call Greg up and be like, Greg, we need new parts for the car. So it was kind of vague in details, and me, I'm just kind of like aloof in that. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Absolutely, sounds good. So yeah, that was probably June, and we had gone back and forth a little bit, and so we trailered the car down for the first time we ever trailered the car down. Actually, the last 10 days we've trailered it twice. We're not doing that anymore, but so we took it down, and we got there. They went over what they wanted to do. It's funny because initially they're like, let Matt get in the car and him drive it. And it was tight in there. So you talked about the third floor on the museum. This was, the basement of the showboat. And there were some columns for structural. And he gets in the car. He's like, maybe he should drive. I'm like, I'm going to drive here, Matt. It'd probably be better. You guys get out and everything. So yeah, I didn't realize what a huge Ghostbusters fan he was, because he was on the Ghost Heads documentary. So,
yeah,
he was super excited to have the car down. Super nice guy, by the way. Everyone at GCW was so nice and so welcoming to us. They were excited to have the car. So they went on first, and again, my aloofness, I did not realize it was a death match. And I'm like, is that on brand for the Ecto-1? I'm not sure if, people are showing their kids this Instagram. They're going to, because they had pizza cutters. And like, if you see some of the videos that I posted, it was pretty ruthless. Like they had the halogen 4-packs, and they're just getting whacked. And so they, he and his partner, they loaded up in the back, and I just kind of cruise in, rolling speed. They popped out. They had the Death Match Busters logo. They came into a custom done song. So it was a lot of fun. So I had Greg leading me in. So I guess, Greg, you could tell the fans' reaction when they saw it.
Sure, yeah. So like Nick was saying, we were kind of almost in a space that was almost like a tiny little hallway just to pull the car up, because they had it all set up as an arena. So there was only so much backstage area. So we had the truck and the trailer in there too. So it was tight. And then obviously all the wrestlers were back there prepping. So I'm kind of just flagging them in and kind of just keeping it off to the side. So that way, we can avoid the crowd. And I don't think anybody realized that that's what was happening. They just saw flashing lights and stuff. So it kind of got like up to the fender, and you just saw like the whole crowd just erupted. And they just, whether you're, a Matt Cardona and Steph DeLander fan or not, I mean, you're it just made the whole thing, that much more intense. So, and that's what people were saying. I just saw everyone's face kind of light up. Everyone that didn't have their phone out grabbed it as quick as they could, and they started filming, and it just went on from there. But the match was overly intense. So if anyone's ever seen Dark Side of the Ring about GCW, a lot of Nick Gage coverage. I mean, there's a lot of intensity to those matches, and Brad, the gentleman that runs GCW, he was very gracious and accommodated us, the entire time we were there. So it was great.
We had a good old time, I mean, again, I'm not saying it's going to be the last time you ever see the Ecto in a wrestling entrance. Maybe we'll do something bigger and better, but shout out to all those guys. It was a great time, and hopefully we see Matt Cardona back in the WWE. And I texted him the day after, and I'm like, listen, I'm always going to be available for WrestleMania in case you need me. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. I think he's like a Long Island guy originally. I think that's where he comes out of, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And so I've seen footage of him when he was a kid, when he was on the Rosie O'Donnell show. And like he was brought out as a kid who could, I don't know, I think he sings or something. That was like, look at this little kid. And it was when Rosie O'Donnell would have kids on from the area who could do funny things. And there's like Matt Cardona on like Rosie O'Donnell, and then he grows up to be who he is. It's kind of funny, but he's always been a performer. He
could definitely take a chair shot like a champ. I'll say that about him.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, great wrestler. And from everybody, all intents, everything I've ever heard about him, very much a nice guy. Obviously he often plays a character in wrestling who may not be so nice to folks, but that's different from who you really are, which is kind of fun.
No, I super appreciative. He must have thanked me like 100 times after the fact, but would love to do it again if he ever needed it. So
it's amazing. Yeah. And I loved it. If you haven't seen this, like if you haven't seen this match, like it is like an extreme wrestling match. So don't watch it with your kids probably unless you want to explain what kayfabe is and what isn't, and etc. But it's definitely fun to watch because not only did you guys have the car there, but he comes out like in a flight suit with the arms cut off.
To
wrestling. Yeah. You're like, what?
I mean, we talk about breathable flight suits. Maybe that's I don't have a lot of us don't have the physique Cardona has, but it could be an option.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because, a running joke on this show is that we're going to get people wrestling robes, like Ric Flair style robes, if they come on the show enough times. And then you all came out with the car at a wrestling event, and then a shout out to, I think it was Ivan Ronald Shablatsky on Facebook, recently suggested that there was a wrestling belt that was on Facebook that had Ghostbusters stuff on it. And he just was like tagged Extraplasm and was like, I think the Extraplasm podcast might need this. And I'm like, oh, we probably need the robes first, but we're getting there. Like, I think Ghostbusters and wrestling are going to merge over until eventually I'm going to have wrestling entrances, and then I'm going to call you. So there you go. I'm never going to be Mark Cardona, but whatever. I'm just going to have wrestling style entrances places I go. Like I'm going to go to, I don't know, like McDonald's and just pyros go off. That's my plan for life.
Theme music hits, you're just rolling in.
Yeah, there you go.